Okay, now let's look at this video. It's going to be about the reference angle. Now your reference angle is going to be an acute angle. What is an acute angle? Angle that is between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. Or if in terms of radian, theta will be between 0 until pi over by 2. So this is 90 degrees. Okay, now let's look at the first quadrant, which is quadrant 1. Now quadrant 1, if you have your real angle, which is theta, your reference angle basically is the same thing. So what you can say that your reference angle is equivalent to your real angle theta. Okay, so for example, if you have, let's say, the angle of 30 degrees, so your reference angle is still a 30 degrees. That's what it means. Okay, now the second one, for the quadrant 2, now if this is going to be your real angle for quadrant 2 from the initial side to your terminal side, which is your real angle, now your reference angle would be the acute one. Where is the acute one? The acute will be on this side. So you can say that your reference angle over here equivalent to 180 because 1/2 semicircle will give you 180. So to get the acute reference angle, you minus out the real angle theta. If it is in term of radian, you can always write it as such. This is equivalent to pi minus pi theta. Okay, for example, let's say example, if you have the angle of 135, so to find your reference angle theta, so you can put it as 180 minus by 135, which is gonna give you 45 degrees. Okay, now let's look at the third one. Okay, the third quadrant. The third quadrant from your initial side to the third quadrant will give you more than 180 degrees. So the acute angle part will be on this side, the one that have towards the x-axis. Okay, how to find your reference angle, which is this, is equivalent to your real angle minus by your 180 degrees over here. So you will have your acute part on this side. Or you can always write it in terms of a radian where theta minus by pi. Now remember that pi is 180, 360 equivalent to 2 pi. Okay. For example, if you have the theta is 225, which is more than 180, so your reference angle, you can put it as such, 225 minus by 180 equivalent to, this is going to give you 45 degrees. So your reference angle will be acute angle of 45 degrees. Okay, now let's look at your quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 tells you that this real angle will be over by 270, but we're not gonna use with the 270. What we use is the total of one rotation to 360 degrees. Now your acute angle on this part. So how to find your reference is just 360 degrees minus by your real angle will get your reference angle. Or if it is in term of radian, you can always put it as such, 2 pi minus by theta. Okay, so that's how you use your reference angle. But again, you must take note few things. Okay, now when you evaluate your trigo function, okay, you must identify which quadrant does it fall, and also the positive value of the corresponding trigo function on the respective quadrant, which mean that your positive side, this one, which is your add sugar to coffee, your all sine, tangent and cosine. Okay, now let's look at example. So those are the ways or the methods how to do it. To further understand, let's go through the example. Let's look at the first example. Find the exact value of the given trigo function with the sine 135. So first thing first, determine where does the quadrant fall. So for the sine 135, this fall on quadrant 2. So might as well you draw your angle. Now your real angle will give you from initial side to quadrant 2. So sketch over a bit. So this one will give you real theta of 135. Your reference angle would be the acute angle. Where is it? It will be fall over here. This is your acute angle. So, how to get the acute angle? You will have your reference as such, 180 degrees minus by 135 degrees, such that you will get your reference angle will equivalent to 45 degrees. Okay, so what to do now? Again, when you want to do the reference angle, you must to take note what is the values of your trigo function at the quadrant 2. So you have to know your add sugar to coffee. Okay, now since sine at the quadrant 2 is a positive angle, so you can conclude that sine 135 will just give you a positive value with a sine. What is your reference angle? Your reference angle here is 45 degrees. So put it here, 45 degrees. Now simply from the one that we have done before, the special angle, sine 45 degrees will give you square root 2 over by 2. So you will have straight away your answer, square root 2 over by 2. Okay. Now let's look at the cosine 135 degrees. So cosine 135, your angle falls on the quadrant 2. So basically it's the same as before. So sketch over your angle on which quadrant. So this is quadrant 2. So this is your real angle, theta 135. Now you can know your reference here, since we actually find already that your reference angle will be equivalent to 45 degrees. So cosine at the quadrant 2 will give you a positive or a negative. Now if you have your add sugar to coffee, your quadrant 2 will have a sign that is supposed to be positive. So what can you conclude? Cosine 135 degrees will give you a negative value. Okay, but again, you cannot straight away find what is the value. You have to use your reference angle. So knowing that 135 will give you negative value with the cosine of an acute angle of 45 degrees. So from here to here is the add sugar to coffee, and then from here, to here also is your reference angle. So two things happening that you have to look at. Then you can conclude negative cosine 45 degrees we already did on your special angle will give you square root 2 over by 2. Straight away from here to here is your special angle that you should know, whether from your calculator or you have to list it out. Okay, so your final answer would be only this. So it's true that when it is at quadrant 2, cosine will give you a negative value. Okay, let's move on to the third one. Cosine 225. So cosine 225, 225 falls on the quadrant 3. So sketch over, so you have over here, okay, quadrant 3. So your real angle is this. This is 225 degrees theta. We want your reference angle to be an acute angle. So acute angle would be over this side. So what it would be, this would be reference angle equivalent to 45 degrees. How do I know? It comes from the 225 minus by 180 degrees. That's where you got 45 degrees. Okay, that is one thing that you look at. Another thing that you look at is at your sugar to coffee. So, for cosine at quadrant 3 will give you negative because only tangent that is positive. What is it that you can conclude? You can conclude that cosine 225 will give you a negative value, but to find that from your special angle, you need to use your reference, which you change from 225, you get your acute angle 45 degrees. So this give you negative cosine 45, we know already will be 2 over by 2. So that's where you got your answer. Okay, again, you have to check two things. One is your reference angle 45 degrees. Another one would be the add sugar to coffee. Okay, sine 330 degrees. So sine 330 degrees, this is quadrant 4. Because it is more than 270, so over here you will have the sketch it over. So this is your real angle theta, 330 degrees. Your acute angle will be on this part. So how to find? You just minus out from your 360, which gonna give you 30 degrees. That is one thing to check. Another one thing you have to check, the sine value, is it going to be positive or negative? So since it is at quadrant 4, cosine is a positive value. So for sine, 330 degrees will give you a negative value. So from your special angle, you get the acute angle 30 degrees, which is your reference. You will have negative sine 30 is equivalent to half. So straight away you get your answer, negative half. Okay?